About this with Ruthie Blum from the Jewish News Syndicate. Ruthie, always good to have you here. We love getting your perspective. The first thing that comes to mind, what stopped Biden from saying the same thing for more than a year? And that feels like a rhetorical question at this point, Ruthie.
Yes. Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me back.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a rhetorical question, but it's a worthwhile one. Exactly. Well, if you want an actual answer, it is that the Biden administration did not want to behave as though they were running the free world as the greatest superpower around the globe. This is in keeping with the Obama administration playbook of leading from behind. And think of this, what President Trump did in that one little statement was reassert American power, reassert good from, the distinction between good and evil, and to threaten Hamas that if it doesn't release the hostages, it'll have all hell to pay. And I can tell you that that one message resonated more than any other discussion, negotiation, statement out of the White House and State Department over the past 14 months.
Ruthie, you're over in Israel right now, but let's talk about Hamas supporters here in the U.S. because as the folks at Just the News are reporting, UCLA has pled for legal immunity for officials in Jew exclusion zone lawsuit. This, of course, is in reference to UCLA's delayed and weak response to the pro-Hamas encampment that school worked to literally stop Jewish students from going to class. Ruthie, shouldn't the Biden Justice Department have thrown the book at UCLA a long time ago to stop this?
Well, absolutely, but it's worse than that. What should have happened to begin with is that every single university administrator should have put a stop to this immediately. Anybody who perpetrates such acts on campus, instead of going to class and taking tests and doing what they're supposed to be doing, especially with these exorbitant tuition fees that their mommies and daddies are paying, is expel them from the university. But we saw the hearings with the heads of Harvard and MIT, et cetera, saying anti-Semitism, it all depends on the context. See, this rot is widespread. So it's not just the Justice Department, this, and by the way, President Trump also announced that when he takes over, he is going to clean up this insanity on the university campuses.
Ruthie, I'd like to talk about the civil war that continues to explode there in Syria. It obviously has forced Iran and Russia to respond, but the United States and Israel are also on notice, if you will, here. So let's talk specifically from the perspective of Israel, since you were there in Tel Aviv. What is the sense in terms of how all of this could potentially spill back over into Israel and impact the Israeli people?
Well, you're right. Israel is really watching like a hawk. And I don't know about this current administration. It says it's watching, but, it's so impotent that I don't know. Whereas Israel is actually fighting a seventh front war right now. And why it's so important is the timing is also very interesting. The timing, it coincides with a so-called ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, which was really between Israel and Washington, you could say, because Lebanon is a failed state. Hezbollah has infiltrated the Lebanese army. The whole thing is a farce, but what it is doing is exposing that it's a farce because Hezbollah promptly violated the ceasefire. Now, why it's relevant is that Iran is behind all of these fronts. And now Iran has to help the Assad regime in Syria fight off the Sunni rebels. I mean, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. What we have in Syria is Jack the Ripper fighting the Boston Strangler. And as the late Prime Minister Menachem Begin said about the Iran-Iraq war in the past, he said, may they all have great success.
Yeah, for sure. Ruthie, let me get back to the hostages real quick that we started with at the top. Out of those hostages, I mean, there are 7 American hostages. I mean, to me, this is unconscionable. I mean, if there were 7 American hostages taken, for example, I think of the Iranian hostage crisis back in 1979. No, there were a lot more back then in terms of American hostages, but that was a huge crisis, and it sank Carter's presidency. And here's Biden tipping through the tulips when there's 7 American hostages over there. That's insane, Ruthie.
It's totally insane. But I will remind you, as you mentioned, the hostage crisis of 1979 in Iran, when these so-called students, this Islamists on behalf of the Ayatollah Khomeini, took all of the U.S. embassy staff hostage for 444 days. And Jimmy Carter, then president, wrote in his diary on the night when he was told that they were taken hostage, my people were taken hostage. There's nothing you can do. Something along those lines. He literally said that in his diary. Now, it's relevant to today because that seems to be the attitude that Biden has adopted. And similarly to the Carter administration, the one side that is always blamed or turned to is Israel. This is a total inversion of moral, immoral, of right and wrong. It's an Orwellian universe that, and it's no wonder then that Biden lost this election.
Yes, but Ruthie, what is it going to take for Americans in the world to learn? You and I both know that the minute Donald Trump is president, these hostages are going to be free. And there won't be more hostages taken under Trump. And we both know that. We know that. What is it going to take for the world to learn that hostages and other violence and wars and all the things happen under Democrat administrations? There's a distinct difference here. And we all know it. And yet the American Jewish population at large tends to continue to vote Democrat.
Listen, I don't understand it, okay? I'm a Jew. I'm originally an American Jew. I've been living in Israel for decades. It mystifies me. It always had. Personally, I've always voted Republican, and it mystifies me because it is true that once upon a time, the Democratic Party was more favorable to Jews. That hasn't been the case in ages.
Decades.
Okay, it makes no sense. It's as though the religion of these Jews is wokeness rather than Judaism, and they use Judaism to say things like we're for making the world a better place, and then they talk about climate change and abortion and trans rights and all kinds of things that while Israel is under mass attack.
You're 100% right, Ruthie. I grew up Jewish. I grew up in a Reformed household. They're following liberalism. They're following secularism. That's the religion, if you will, in Reformed Judaism. I know that's going to offend some folks, but that's the truth. And I have Orthodox relatives that are not only Republican, but are very, very pro-Israel. So there is a big schism between the two. Ruthie, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ruthie.
And thank you so much for having me.
All right. Stay safe. Coming up,